Hello, I am C.A. Brill, the author of Why Christians Should Oppose Christian Nationalism, now available for Kindle. I wrote this book in order to address some recent issues that I noticed in relation to Christian nationalism. So, in recent times, there has been some confusion and controversy over Christian nationalism, its definition, and whether it conforms to the standards of the Christian faith. This book is written to offer a clear and coherent definition of Christian nationalism to help Christians understand the content and implications of this ideology and to warn against certain errors that pervade Christian nationalism. C.A. Brill, that is, I, approach the subject not from a modern liberal perspective, but from an older paradigm that seeks to understand what Christ has commanded to his church. So that is to say that I don't go with the typical argument that a lot of people that oppose Christian nationalism, they go from the perspective of, well, what about my civil rights here? What about the rights of those people there? I try to look at it from a different perspective. I try to look at it from the perspective of what does God want? What does God want for the church? What does God want for his people? What does God want politically speaking? And I think that there's actually quite a lot that can be said politically about the Bible. So, therefore, Christian nationalism is discussed in 9 chapters, moving from definitions to objections. The discussion is not only rooted in the opinion of the author, that is my opinion, but also in references to the contents of the inerrant scripture. That is to say, I make a lot of Bible references in this. In fact, quite extensively. There's some paragraphs where I really fill it up with a lot of verses because when you look at the Bible and the topics relating to Christian nationalism, particularly when you try to define nationalism, there's certain ideas that you end up running into, like popular sovereignty, self determination, and such things. Those are things that I think the Bible does address quite thoroughly. Not in a direct sense, as in the Bible wasn't written with a particular book or letter in one of the epistles specifically writing against Christian nationalism. However, if you look at the whole counsel of Scripture, there are a lot of things that can be said. Indeed, a holistic view of how Scripture interacts with this issue has been sorely lacking in the general discourse. And this work is hoped to be a beginning leading to such analyses. That is to say, I don't necessarily think that this is the end of a discussion. While I certainly believe that I have a very strong conclusion and a conclusion that is reached from several different avenues, that is to say, from multiple arguments, I do not believe that this is necessarily the end of a discussion. I understand that there certainly will be a lot of different viewpoints with a lot of nuance that need to be addressed. It is the author's hope that this work will encourage Christians in their love toward God and each other so that they may be able to uphold virtue, order, and prosperity in accordance with the kingship of Jesus Christ in the political sphere. That is to say, regardless of what your opinion is regarding Christian nationalism or other types of Christian political ideologies, all Christians need to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ and therefore the authority that Jesus holds over the church. Now, this book is written not only from one particular theological perspective, while I certainly have my own understanding of soteriology and eschatology and ecclesiology and all such other things that are part of my particular theological tradition. I decided to write this book from a more broad perspective, looking at certain issues from a purely exegetical perspective, and of course, adding in the necessary elements to engage with the political philosophy that is necessarily being engaged with when we're talking about nationalism and various political ideologies. So while I have done this, I have decided to take a somewhat more neutral approach when discussing these matters, so that I don't go off on a rabbit trail talking about how should the church be organized, who should be in charge in the church, and issues like exactly how people are saved. Although I do bring out the gospel, and I'm certain that people that read it will understand that there are many elements of the gospel that I do think are important in understanding this. I don't think, however, that this is necessarily an issue that directly engages with soteriology per se. Although certainly, while I will acknowledge that soteriology is important to the Christian nationalists. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Tell me what you think. I have published this book now, and I am hoping to be able to have interviews in order to discuss it with other people. This is my first book that is written in a more purely theological perspective, while my previous books do have certain theological elements to them. This is one that is written primarily from a theological perspective, which makes it somewhat different. However, I will say that I wrote this with the approval of the pastors of my church. So they know what's going on. This isn't something that I'm just doing on my own without any accountability. If they had a major theological critique about it, they would have told me. So thank you all for watching, and I will be seeing you all next time. C.A. Brill, over and out.